Hello, we're back to take another look at this exciting box. If you remember, it was kindly sent in by Joe, who wrote that it contains photos her father must have acquired in Hong Kong. It's a long panorama of the city from the harbour with handwritten notes on the back, and is dated to November the 4th, 1909. But she says it's not in great shape. The paper is stiff and fragile, torn and cracked, and tightly rolled into 4 separate pieces. She's packed it very carefully. It's come in these 2 cardboard tubes, so let me open those up and show you what's inside. So inside the tubes we've got these 2 rolled photos, and you can see the problem already, that often if you roll paper up you expect it to spring back open again when you take it out of a tube, but this is just sitting there, so the paper is very stiff. Very interesting though, the original owner has written lots of notes on the back. See Hong Kong Hotel, Old Kowloon City. So a lot of this is going to be landmarks that we already know about, but there's also some interesting, more personal notes. So the site of the volunteer camp in 1909, so that would be nothing permanently marked on a map, but we'll see where they were setting up, and perhaps we can cross-reference that to some of the volunteers' reports from 1909 as well. The rolls are actually not just a single roll, so let me separate them out into the different pieces. We've got a larger roll with a smaller roll inside it, and again larger roll and smaller roll. So let's put those together. So these, as far as I can tell, are originally a single panorama, and these are taken from up on the hillside, somewhere in mid-levels, looking out over Central towards Kowloon. And then these 2 are a view in the opposite direction, so this is from the harbour looking towards the seafront. No notes that I can see on this one, so a bit of a different style. And if I just gently hold the paper there, again you can see it's just not wanting to unroll at all, and these ones in fact are even in worse condition, stiffer and more brittle. You can see some pieces have broken off here. So what's happened? Well, if we roll up paper over time, it tends to sort of remember the shape that it's been put into. But the other problem is, if paper is kept in very dry conditions, then it dries out and the paper becomes very stiff, very hardened, and sort of set into its shape. So it's all to do with humidity. It's been raining overnight and it's drizzling now here in Wales. So we're currently at 60% humidity. It's pretty damp. Nothing like Hong Kong summers, of course, or Hong Kong springs. If we have paper kept much higher than this, like over 60%, we get one set of problems, which are getting mold. That's something we want to avoid. Ideally, sort of 40 to 50 is perfect. And if it keeps going down, if we go down below 30%, that's when the paper tends to dry out and get very stiff. So there is something we can do that should help. I'm not a trained conservationist, but if we put the paper into a very humid environment just for a short time, that'll probably relax it or soften it enough that we can flatten it out, and then we'll compress it back into a flat shape so it remembers its shape is flat again, and then after that we'll be able to scan it and get a look at the scene. So let me show you how we're going to do that. So here's the equipment, nothing very high-tech. It's a big plastic box that's usually full of photos and photo albums that I've emptied out for the moment. It's got a very thin layer of room temperature water in the bottom and a rack. Now in some cases you'll see people put the photos on the rack. The benefit of that is you get maximum exposure to the humidity. I'm a little bit cautious of anything falling off into the water, so I'm going to put a tray in at the bottom instead. and hope that the humidity still works out all right. So this is simply a baking tray. It's all clean, but I've put a piece of plastic in the base just to be sure. And on top of that, then we'll arrange the paper. Okay, so that's all dry. Obviously we want the paper to be in a very humid environment, but we do not want water to touch it at all. So that's why we've got the tray. Okay, so last thing is put the lid on top. So 62%. I think we'll give that an hour. We'll come back and see how has the humidity changed. Right, here we are an hour later, and I can't see the display, which is good news and bad news. I think what it means is there's a thin film of condensation on the inside of the lid, which is good because it means that the humidity is rising. But it's a worry because we certainly don't want any drips forming on the inside. So I'll give the underneath of the lid a wipe with a towel in a moment. Anyway, let's have a look inside. So it's 79%, so it's certainly rising. Now, one of the problems of these being rolled up so tightly is that, oops, there's another section I hadn't realized, is that that's not a good example. Let's try that one. Okay, the inner papers, sort of in the middle of the sandwich, are not getting the humid air touching them. So what I'm going to gently do is just try and not unroll them, but just sort of loosen them up a little bit so there's more of a gap between the layers, and hopefully the air will get into them. As I say, I'll wipe down the lid and then close it up again. Here we are after 2 hours. You can see the humidity still rising. No condensation on the lid, which is good. So I'll just keep trying to relax, I think is the word, relaxing the paper, opening it out a little bit, letting more of the air go in, and then checking it every hour just to make sure there's no condensation. Back again after 3 hours, and temperature and humidity much the same as after 2 hours. Let's move the lid out of the way. So it's going to be just repeat now. Every hour come back, check for condensation, and just keep gently loosening up the rolls here. It's the next day. You can see the humidity's gone up. I guess that's probably about the peak, 92%. Helped along by the local weather again. You might be able to hear the local foghorn in the background at times. Anyway, let's have a look inside. And it looks good. It reminds me of seeing bread dough rising overnight. So you can see that the paper here is a lot looser now than it was when we started. If you look back to how this paper was when we first opened up the box, and if we look at it now, so it just easily opens up, much softer. Great view down at Central here. Clock tower still standing there. See the post office being built in the distance. Anyway, lots to explore here. We'll come back to that later. So the paper actually a little bit sort of clammy to the touch. So that's enough really. I've seen people doing this with photos from say the 1960s. They've only needed about 4 or 5 hours in the humid environment. People talking about some very heavyweight paper, old paper in a very brittle state, talk about leaving it in there for 2 to 3 days. But for this one, last night when I looked just before the end of the day, it was still a bit stiff, so I've left it in, but we'll stop there. The next step is to try and flatten them out even further. So the the photos have gone in a sheet of plastic here, simply an A4 document folder that I've sliced up, and it's got a blotting paper underneath. Then you can see the other half of this panorama facing down on the other side. So we've got the shiny side of the picture facing plastic to hopefully make sure it doesn't stick to anything. And then in the middle of the sandwich is a sheet of blotting paper, which we hope will take away sort of any excess moisture. We'll repeat that for the second panorama. This will be another layer on top here, and then put some heavy weights, some flat boards and heavy weights on top, and leave that for around 3 days. And again, what we're trying to do is give the paper a new memory, so it was remembering that it was rolled up and it was fixed into that shape. And now we're hoping that we can set it back to being in a flat sheet, which will certainly make it easier for storage and easier for scanning. That's the second panorama, sort of thinner and longer. The bulk of it is facing down underneath the blotting paper, and then we've got these two fragments here to try and flatten out as well. Then we need some firm flat boards on top. I'm using placemats here, whatever you've got to hand, something that's going to keep the surface nice and flat and clean. And then the last step is to load them up with heavy weights on top. Books would be a good choice. I happen to have several boxes of my books. Each box weighs about 14 kilos, so should do the job nicely. And then we just leave them for about 3 days, and then we'll come back and see how they turn out. Well, here we are. It's been 3 days. So time to take the weights off and see how the photos are looking. And here's how they look. So much better. You can still see a slight curve around here at the edges. And these two fragments, these also have a slight curve to them, but much better than they were. They'll scan nicely now, and we can store them flat after this. And just to see the detail that we've got here, so a really good sharp panorama looking out over Central and across to Tsim Sha Tsui beyond. That's the first half, and this is the second section. These bits we'll probably be able to join together in the after scanning. So I won't be trying to restore the paper anymore, but after we've scanned them in, we should be able to join up some of the pieces and make one lovely big panorama. So that's the first one, and the other one much the same. So still a little bit of a curl, so much better than before, mostly flat. And after scanning, we'll be able to join up these. So this one, quite badly damaged. I'm not sure we'll ever get a sort of a great final picture out of it, but still for sections we're going to be enjoying looking at the details here. Especially the section here, good view of the dockyard. And obviously still very new at this point. This picture taken in 1909, dockyard opened in 1907. So I'll say that was well worth taking the time to do. Quite easy, just a bit of time, a bit of care, worth doing if you've got some old photos in a similar condition. I've actually got a bunch from the 1950s which are quite badly curled. I'll do the same approach on those at some stage. Well, that finishes this video. We'll come back and take a look after we've scanned in the pictures and at least joined the pieces back together. Thanks for watching.